Hi everybody, welcome back to my video series on Agile Development 101. In the last episode, we did sprint planning, and what would happen after sprint planning is the product owner would kind of separate from the development team, and the development team would get to work on the product backlog items that were selected for the sprint. So I'm going to go with the development team now and start that process. And this particular product backlog item is a bit user interface heavy. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a mock-up for how we're going to tackle this. So if you remember, we're adjusting the customer view to include shipments under quotes question mark. This is the current customer view, and everything under here is this is the customer, and all these items are quotes because there is no shipment in the system yet. Now, I need a way to display shipments, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a mock-up and think my way through it, and I'll talk a little bit about sort of stuff that should be considered. First thing is I'm going to make a very basic wireframe mock-up of the current version using just rectangles. This allows for some really easy trial and error design to be done. Very quickly build things and throw things away. So we got this kind of canvas, and then we have the back to customer list button. We have the customer block, and then we have a bunch of quote blocks, which are a bit smaller. Right. So there is the good thing about this design. So right now is that there's a visual hierarchy. Okay, this thing is obviously at the top. It could be made even more clear if it were, let's say, wider than the other items, or I don't know. It also has bold in it, so it's clear that kind of customer is here, and then there are things below it. The visual hierarchy tells you the relationship between the objects. So these guys are children of this guy. So the question to ask ourselves, and this may even be a business question, is what is the relationship between a shipment and a customer, or a shipment and a quote? And depending on your answer to that question, the potential design changes, right? Because you want to reflect the relationship between the objects visually in the design. If a shipment is a child of a customer, but a sibling of a quote, then it would look one way. And if it is a child of a quote directly, then it would look some other way. So I'm going to assume that I've spoken to the product owner, and we have a strategy that we want all shipments to have a quote, and therefore there will always be a quote associated with a shipment, and therefore shipment should be a child of a quote. Okay, and a quote is a child of a customer. And that may or may not be reasonable. We could ask questions, what if a shipment comes from a different source, and so on, but there's probably ways around those things. But what we're saying is that there's another level to this hierarchy. So this is a quote, right? And I'm gonna put a label. This is a quote. Oops, quote. And this is a customer. So there's a visual hierarchy there. Then maybe there's a shipment below it. Maybe it's indented a little bit to show that it's the child. because it was directly under, might be a bit confusing whether or not it's a child or not. So that's one possible solution. And let's see, call it shipment. Now I have one possible solution on paper right now. I think the first thing that anybody needs to learn about UI or UX design is to be self-critical. To really not, like the number one mistake that I see novices making is that they fall in love with their first idea. They thought of it, it's theirs, they own it, and they will argue it to the death that it's great. And this is a really horrible state of mind to be in, because the odds of your first idea being better than your second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh ideas is extremely low. I can probably think of better ways to do it, but our brains are so simple, we can only hold one of these things in our mind at a time, or only a few in our mind at a time. So unless I actively explore other ideas, I'm not going to come up with something better. And if I continue to believe this idea is the best, I will just self-reinforce this bad, incorrect assumption. Now, I forget which book I read it in, but one technique for breaking out of this, falling in love with your first idea is to, from the outset, insist that any sort of design, any sort of mock-up, there must be 7 different ideas presented. 7 different. Okay, 7 is a lot. And so in this book, it was saying the first 4 ideas are quite easy to come up with. Like off the top of your head, you can probably think of 4 ways to do just about anything. The second 2 probably require a little bit of, or like the next 2, so the 5th and the 6th, require a bit of thinking. And the 7th probably requires outside of the box creativity. And so the goal in this like 7 idea structure is to get your brain to the point of this radical creativity and see what comes out. Because even if you don't use that idea for this particular mock-up, you have expanded your pool of ideas for future work by being that creative. Right? And so if you do that repeatedly, you'll end up with this ever-expanding pool of design ideas that you can draw from. So what might be the 7th idea in this mock-up might end up being the 2nd idea in some other mock-up. And so I'm going to try to do this in a couple of other ways. Right? So this is one. This is idea 1. Okay. And let's see. I think I can make another one. Oops. Duplicate. So idea 2. Okay, idea 2, what I could do is make this all kind of one here, and then I could have like shipment, if there happen to be more than one. That's something else I don't really know right now. Can there be more than one? And then I could do cool stuff like the cargo should probably be the same. The movement should probably be the same between these. Is that always the case? I don't know. So I could connect them, right? So that's idea number 2. Idea number 3. Okay, what could I do? I could do some kind of like accordion type thing, where it's like hidden, but then when you hover over it, so when you hover over it, it expands. Oops. But I already don't like this idea because it involves a lot of animation, which might not be, let's see. So hover to expand. Okay, so that's another idea. Let me copy this one again. Oops. Duplicate. So this idea 4. And in this idea, what would I do? Maybe the quote can only have one shipment, and so either there is a shipment or there isn't. And so then, maybe we quoted like 10 packages, but we ended up with a shipment with 20 packages. We could reflect it in here. So the shipment, maybe there could be some kind of like vertical divider between the quote and the shipment. Then I would potentially save some space, vertically, and I could fit more on a page in an efficient way. So that's idea 4. Idea 5. Idea 5 is maybe the quote gets replaced by a shipment. Maybe shipment is just another status of the quote. So I should probably label that so I know what I'm talking about when I revisit it. So quote is replaced by shipment. Okay, that's another idea. So you can see maybe my ideas are not coming quite so fast anymore. I think 6 and 7 are going to be hard for me. All right, how else could we represent this? You could do something, let's see. There could be like a button, which I guess is sort of similar to the other. This could be the shipment, like go to shipment. So that's if there's a shipment and there's a button here, which would take you to it. And if there isn't a shipment, then it wouldn't take you to it. Like there wouldn't be a button, sorry. Okay, idea 6. Now idea 7. Now this is the part where I have to get really creative. What's another way to do this? Assuming that the shipment is a child of the customer, of the quote, and the quote is a child of the customer. Maybe I can draw inspiration from something else for the hierarchy. So here in my, I have little arrows which open and close these things. And what's kind of cool about these arrows is they could be conditionally defaulted to open or close. So if there is a shipment, but it's canceled or it's finished or somehow, I could default it to close. But if it was active, I could default it to open. So I could do something like that, and I could have a little arrow. I could have something like, that's too big. But, yeah. And then it looks like this at first. And then when you click on it, then it changes to a down arrow. And then we get a shipment. And I should put a note about the behavior. Okay, so oops. Paragraph text. Okay, so quotes with a shipment are expandable if there is an active shipment on a quote, then default to expanded. If there is a not an active shipment a quote, then default to collapse. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I got 7 ideas. Idea 1, which is super simple. 2, not that different. 3, 4, 5, replaced. A button. Idea 7. Okay, so I don't know how creative you might think these are. They're not super creative. But since we're going for an MVP, I think we can do something among the ideas. I like 1 and 2 the most. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep both of them in mind and maybe try them. I'll try different. Like there's not a lot of difference in the CSS, so I can actually do both and then compare how they work and do some usability testing with somebody who is around me. So that is kind of like a quick and dirty way that that UI mockups can be done. I hope you found it interesting, and see you next time.